Hey, good morning. Welcome back to another edition of Anarcho-Caffeinated. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. Have some coffee with me. Let's talk about what's going on, what it really means. I thought I would be done talking about the experts and all the fallout from Douglas Murray and Dave Smith's appearance on Joe Rogan. But it's still got legs. Everyone's got opinions on it, which you're entitled to, even if you're not an expert. I will give you that permission. You also don't have to have an opinion. That's okay too. It really is. There are no good outcomes from the continuous wars in the Middle East, so I'm against them. But I don't have all the answers. I can't tell you one side definitively bears all the blame. I doubt that's ever the case in any conflict between nations, but we can still learn something from it. So I honestly think that the biggest problem with this whole argument, the debate, and all the commentary that's following it, is that people on each end are just not talking about the same thing. Murray and crew are talking about the danger of anti Semitism and worried that questioning certain socially accepted narratives will lead to bad outcomes. Dave Smith and people on his side are talking about the problem with out of control empires and the fact that they constantly lie to us and present it as truth. And in a sense, they're both talking about who they perceive as victims, except that the victims are on opposing sides in this case. It reminds me of a Jordan Peterson saying, ironically, which you'll see why in a minute, but he said something like, you can always find a reason to call yourself a victim. And you're probably right. It's possible that there are very fine victims on both sides, but what do you do about it? You know what I mean? Like there's always something you can point to in your life that put you at a disadvantage, that was unfair, or worse. And both Jewish people and the people in Gaza can point to a lot of these kinds of things for themselves. These are big things that are worth sorting out, unless you want the war to continue forever. So here's where I'm coming at it from. This is my libertarian bias, because we're all biased. But I think that being at war only benefits the people in power. That should be self-evident. The people fighting, and the people in the crossfire, and the people whose economies are destroyed, and the people who are stolen from to pay for it, that's clearly not a benefit to them. It's not a benefit to anyone but the elites. And they can keep doing it as long as they can sell it to a majority of the people as a necessary and a righteous cause. So I'm always skeptical of anyone being an apologist or making excuses for wars to continue. It doesn't mean they're always wrong. So, with that in mind, something very interesting is happening in the wake of that so-called debate. And it's that there's like a subsection of conservatives that are circling the wagons over it. Some that might be surprising. Some that are even going after Joe Rogan over it, which is very weird to see for someone who's generally liberal, who was so generous to these voices on the right, and then seeing them turn on him is pretty ridiculous. Could it be a plot to split the right? Maybe. But there are a couple of these people that I'll mention today because they're both being very subtle and careful about the subject, but you can tell that they're hinting very hard at Rogan about who he's, quote, platforming. The two are Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson. Rubin is one of those, the left me guys, one who's become part of this new conservative wave, along with people like James Lindsay and Konstantin Kizin. These guys are also rushing in to cover up for Murray's disaster of a debate. These guys who made their bread on being able to speak out against cultural idols, people who are now turning around and trying to shut the door behind them and gatekeep other people's opinions. And just so you know what I'm talking about here, I put together a couple of clips of Rubin and Peterson, their thinly veiled suggestions that Rogan needs to step up on his gatekeeping. Here we go.
What started this kind of catching fire online is that there now seems to be a question as to who should be considered an expert? Should we care about what experts think? Clearly, the expert class failed us largely during COVID. We found out we have been lied to about so many things. But I think the real question at the moment is what responsibility, now that the alt media, which I am a part of, the alt media is ascendant, obviously, right? We now have the culture, and the mainstream media is descended. What responsibility do we have? Bill said it perfectly. Like, he's a free speech absolutist, basically, is what he said. But everyone has some level of gatekeeping. This is just true. Bill doesn't put every single person on his show. Certain people get on his show. Joe puts certain people on his show. Not everyone gets on his show. I do that. Like, that's just reality, right? You have a finite amount of time, a finite amount of resources, and everything else.
Given your radical increase in stature over the last 10 years, how do you know when your curiosity and even your skepticism about the fact that things aren't the way that people say they are, because that's certainly been demonstrated in the last 10 years, how should anyone decide what guardrails to put up? Like, what do you look for? How do you draw the line? And that's kind of what because I've been watching these right-wing, they're not right-wing, these psychopathic types manipulate the edge of the conservative movement for their own gain.
Yeah, that psychopath clip went around pretty virally. People like to say that he was talking specifically about Dave Smith, and I don't know if that's exactly true. It seems like it, I will admit, but I'll give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. Both of these guys are questioning. They're just asking questions. I know they hate this argument, but they're just asking questions. Oh, how? How do you choose who gets on your platform? So before we get into that exactly, one side note, Rubin says that the alt media has ascended. And this is really a side point, but yes, there's a lot of truth to that. Although I wouldn't count all those chickens just yet. The legacy media's attempts to infiltrate the podcast world have been pretty weak so far, but I'm sure they will figure it out. They may have to use government to regain their monopoly, but I'm not going to put it past them. And part of this, adding these voices to say we should gatekeep a little bit more can give some cover to that potential action. So I am a little bit worried about that. But there's another thing that I see happening. Even if they aren't the same, even if Rubin and Peterson and Daily Wire and all these guys are not exactly the same as the old news model, as shows like Rubin get bigger and bigger, they approach the same problems that the corporate news media companies face. Big sponsors can obviously influence your content. That one should be easy to see. And also, who do you hitch your wagon to? That also has a big effect. And I think that's the case with Peterson and the Daily Wire. That's definitely influenced what he talks about, who he talks about, in what way. Joe Rogan, for some reason, seems much less susceptible to these pitfalls. So the attacks are really crazy to see. Rogan's always just seemed like an open guy to me. Like, he will just hear you out. So again, very weird that these things are happening. There's also that saying that, everyone has a price, and that's probably true. I think you'd be surprised how cheap it is for a lot of people. There was something going around about right-wing influencers being paid by soda companies. I think it was $1,000 to post some nonsense in support of whatever legislation they wanted to happen. I don't know all the details, but it's sad. $1,000, my price is a lot higher than that, by the way. If anyone with money is interested in my tiny audience, you're going to have to bring some more. But I digress. Having a big audience can also stop you from being fully honest, even without those outside influences. It can also stop you from being very interesting, because generally, the bigger the audience, the more you kind of have to dumb things down. You kind of have to get to the least common denominator thing. And if you're too honest, you start offending big portions of your audience and they go away. So audience capture is is a real thing. But there is perhaps some responsibility to aim for truth. And I said on my last one that we'll probably never have the full truth in this life, so aiming at truth is the best that we can do. And people who are known liars and charlatans should be cast aside, in my opinion. If a host starts entertaining too many of those people, I'm definitely losing interest. So how do you filter out who you have on your platform? There are people that I wouldn't want to talk to for sure, but and assuming they want to talk to me, but for Rubin, well, think about what got you to where you are. Rubin started talking to people that were outside his little liberal bubble of what he considered true or reasonable, and some were convincing, some were not. So you probably don't know who those people are until you talk to them or listen to them. So it was because of that openness, though, that I found Rubin and other people who left the left interesting. It was fascinating to watch them come to terms with some things that they had believed to be true and discovered, Oh, I was wrong. So I used to watch Rubin way back when he had his awakening. Do we call that woke? I don't know. But since he went full right wing, I felt a shift. He lost that openness, and I lost interest. I haven't listened to his show in years. So it's worth noting what gained him that success in the first place. And just to take a little trip back through time, just to see where these people came from and why it's so ironic that they're pushing back on it now. Rubin has had his eyes opened. He used to talk about this one in particular, Larry Elder. Larry Elder challenged him on his beliefs about systemic racism, and Rubin didn't have an argument. And that caused him to actually think about it and shift his opinion. And the other thing, if I remember right, I don't want to misrepresent him. It's been a long time since I watched any of his stuff, but I do believe that another big moment he talked about was with Ben Affleck on Bill Maher's show with Sam Harris. And it's crazy how much these people intersect. But you guys remember this, right? Like, I think it's worth revisiting. This one's from like 10 years ago. So let's take a little trip down memory lane here with this one.
So the other thing we want to talk about, of course, is that you and I have been trying to make the case, I think, I have anyway, that liberals need to stand up for liberal principles. This is what I said on last week's show. Obviously, I got a lot of hate for it. But all I'm saying is that liberal principles like freedom of speech, freedom to practice any religion you want without fear of violence, freedom to leave a religion, equality for women, equality for minorities, including homosexuals. These are liberal principles that liberals applaud for. But then when you say in the Muslim world this is what's lacking, then they get upset.
Yeah. Well, liberals have really failed on the topic of theocracy. They'll criticize white theocracy. They'll criticize Christians. They'll still get agitated over the abortion clinic bombing that happened in 1984. But when you want to talk about the treatment of women and homosexuals and free thinkers and public intellectuals in the Muslim world, I would argue that liberals have failed us. And the crucial point of confusion, thank you.
Thank God you're here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the crucial point of confusion is that we have been sold this meme of Islamophobia, where every criticism of the doctrine of Islam gets conflated with bigotry toward Muslims as people.
Right.
And that is it's intellectually ridiculous. Even it gets
So hold on,
conflated
are
with
you
racism.
the person who understands the officially codified doctrine of Islam? You're the interpreter of that? So you can say, well, this is...
I'm actually well educated on this topic.
I'm asking you. So you're saying if I criticize you're saying that Islamophobia is not a real thing. That if you're critical of something...
Well, it's not a real thing when we do it.
Right.
Well, no,
It really isn't.
I'm not denying that certain people are bigoted against Muslims as people. And that's a problem.
Big of you.
But
why are you so hostile about this?
It's gross. It's racist.
It's not. But it's so not.
It's like saying those stateless, shifty Jew.
You're not listening
Absolutely
to
not.
what we are saying.
You guys are saying if you want to be liberals, believe in liberal principles like freedom of speech, like we are endowed by our forefathers with inalienable rights, like all men are created equal.
Ben, we have to be able to criticize bad ideas. And
of course we do. No liberal doesn't want to criticize bad ideas.
But Islam at this moment is the motherlode of bad ideas.
Jesus.
So we have.
Oh man, that clip is always funny and really fascinating. So you have three people here who are all on the left of the political spectrum. Harris is breaking from the consensus position at the time that all cultures are basically the same and there are not problems with importing millions of them into a completely different culture. Harris might have had some truth there. Bill Maher is open to the conversation, but Affleck just cannot grasp that there could be any nuance in this situation, and he just vomits out, "You're a racist." Like he got visibly irritated that this was even being discussed. Anyone with an open mind saw that and scratched their heads about how he could be so obtuse. And with the current the argument, it's reversed. So the right was quick to accept that frame from Harris, that we should be wary of these so-called invaders and that they all want to destroy Western civilization. They don't believe in our liberal values. That tends to be the right's frame, so it makes sense. It's civilization versus barbarians. And the fault with that is that you start to paint everyone as barbarians, even when they don't deserve it. But back to Murray, he couldn't seem to grasp that whatever you think of Islam and Israel's situation, there are innocent people caught in the middle of it that don't deserve to be blown to bits. I don't think that should be a difficult thing to take in, but here we are. Instead, he falls back to, "You hate the Jews." It's equivalent to Affleck's, "It's gross, it's racist," with the added irony of treating an entire race as subhuman. And Ben also threw out the expertise argument at Harris too. The similarities in this are really funny. So he's like, Are you the one that understands the codified doctrine of Islam? Have you even been to the Middle East? It's so funny. But this goes right back to the quote I shared before, that people are far more interested in what they heard than in what you said. So Affleck heard that all Muslims are terrorists and they're less than human when Sam Harris brought up statistics that showed disproportionate attack numbers on their part. Murray hears anti-Semitism when Daves brings up that Israel's leadership are not angels. The problem is that people have already made up an association in their mind. Douglas seems to have encountered a lot of anti-Semitic resistance to what Israel does, which is fair. That's not hard to find. But of course, that doesn't make all opposition to Israel's government actions anti-Semitic. But the mind associates the two groups on what they see as the important piece of it, to the point where, if you're not smart, they can't be separated. And so it's kind of disappointing to see Murray talk like this, because he did seem a little bit smarter than that. So he's either not as smart as we thought, or he's not being honest. It also seems like Murray is much closer to the woke side here. Too much black and white. He's not saying explicitly, but it sounds like he's very close to saying Palestinians are all subhuman monsters, and I don't accept that. I don't believe in collectivizing people based on where they live or what color they are. I don't think that should be controversial. And as I've said, I don't really know where the line is on the broader conflict situation. I don't know how much is Israel's government acting in bad faith and how much is them truly acting in the interest of self-preservation. But ironically, this gatekeeping tactic is going to push a lot more people into listening to people like Daryl Cooper, I bet. It's going to push people out to the fringes more and more, because we should be skeptical when you hear people say that you can't listen to something, you can't talk about it, you can't platform someone. That immediately makes those people more interesting, even for me, because I want to know why. And maybe a good portion of the time, those people could be right. We shouldn't listen to them. But, anyone out there with crazy views that are out of the ordinary can find a little bit of an audience. So there's always going to be that, I don't know, Jordan Peterson said 4 or 5% psychopaths. There's always going to be maybe around 5% of people who will fall into that. They'll fall victim to people talking in that way, a hateful, collectivizing way. And those people are not worth listening to. But back to the overall theme about platforming and expertise. It feels like people like Ben Affleck 10 years ago, and similarly Douglas Murray today, they want to shut down conversations from happening because they're worried about what crazy people will do with that information. And it's not a completely baseless worry. There are a lot of crazy people. There are plenty of people with anti-Semitic beliefs. But I would call that the dumb version of the conversation. But does that mean that we should shut down the smart conversations because people are too stupid to understand nuance? I'd say that leaves us stuck with an incomplete story. And in this case, one that gives cover to slaughter of tens of thousands of innocent people. It feels like we're stuck on kind of a midwit island, drawing conclusions that aren't 100% right, making big oversimplifications, which leads us to some very bad outcomes. But because Smith and Murray and really everyone involved in the larger conversation are just talking past each other, we're stuck. It's hard to watch, but it's also fascinating to see in real time. And that's why I wanted to share my thoughts about it. Let me know what you guys think. I'm on the side of keeping conversations open, letting them happen, even if some of them aren't good, even if some people fall for generalizations about a race, about whatever topic you like. That's a risk we probably have to live with just because of the nature of humanity. But yeah, let me know. Thanks for joining me again on this Sunday morning. I'll be talking about this issue a lot more on If By Whiskey tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Catch it live, or you can always watch the recording afterward if you can't make it, but it's more fun live. Put in your comments in the chat. We do get to most of them, if not all. And yeah, anyway, that's it for me. Thank you. I will see you next time.
Come, family. Sit in the snow with Daddy and let us all bask in television's warm, glowing, warming glow.
Everything is going to be fine.